we go. Pat Buchanan. This is Larry Elder. He's a black Republican. Oh, of course. Ayn Rand. Another Ayn Rand. Fountainhead. And another Ayn Rand. Virtue of selfishness. Hi, I'm Ash, and I'm from Brooklyn, New York. Now, you may not believe it, but I once considered myself a Republican. Back in late high school or early college, I loved to read books by Ayn Rand and Larry Elders. I loved watching Bill O'Reilly, and to this very day, I still love watching William F. Buckley. So when I turned 18, I registered to vote as a Republican. I even signed up as a volunteer for the Ron Paul campaign, and I still get emails from them to this very day. But even though I never dropped off the party officially, by my junior year in college, I was no longer a Republican. So these days, I find myself wondering, what would have happened if I had stayed a Republican? What's it like being a Republican in big, liberal New York City nowadays? How do other New Yorkers treat them, and how do they deal with the odds stacked against them in local elections? So I got in contact with two members of a group called the Brooklyn Young Republican Club, and they agreed to give me a glimpse into their world as they try to set New York right.
We can set it right. We can set it right. Move it on.
The first stop on our journey is Kensington, Brooklyn.
My name is Glenn Nocera, president of the Brooklyn Young Republican Club. I have been president of the club since 2011. Well, I became a Republican at the tender age of 6. It was March 30th, 1981. President Ronald Reagan got shot. From that point on, at the age of 6, I started watching the news to see how the president was doing, and basically following his administration as a real young Republican, as you could say. I grew up in the 1980s, where we were all fearful of nuclear destruction. I was, around when Ronald Reagan made that speech at the Berlin Wall.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
I went to Ronald Reagan's funeral in 2004 when he passed away. I went to Washington, D.C., and I went to the Capitol Rotunda, and I, seen the coffin, and I made sure I gave him a big salute. He was my political idol and my idol also.
Sadly for Glenn, Reagan's America is long gone, and this year they have a big election coming up. The 2013 race for New York City Mayor has come down to Republican candidate Joe Lhota and Democratic candidate Bill de Blasio. Republicans only make up about 11% of New York City's active registered voters, and Bill de Blasio is way ahead in the polls. Glenn knows some major campaigning needs to be done to give Joe Lhota the win, so he invited me out to Bay Ridge to see him campaigning for some Republican candidates.
Well, in Bay Ridge, it's more of a friendlier town for Republicans, but we got to go all over the place, get the message out there.
We ended up meeting with Republican candidate for Comptroller John Burnett. We ran into Republican State Senator Marty Golden and City Council candidate John Quaglione, but Joe Lhota was nowhere to be found, and I wasn't the only person to notice.
I noticed Joe Lhota hasn't been here. Actually, I saw him in Staten Island. This is prime time.
Yeah, this is parade. I left early and then...
This is his vote. He should have been here. I noticed you don't see de Blasio here. Could this be that your guy is taking a dive?
No,
it's looking this way.
No, not at all.
Not to be here? This is Rudy Giuliani land.
I agree. He should have been out here. So we'll see if maybe he had another event that conflicted with his scheduling. So at the end of the day, I think the Lhota campaign will turn around their numbers, and he will be our next mayor of the city of New York because he is also the right man for the job.
Even though Glenn's optimism was slightly comforting, I started wondering if we'd ever see Joe Lhota in person. Then about 2 weeks later, Glenn called me out of nowhere and told me to meet him at a place called Cafe K. Come to find out, Joe Lhota actually agreed to sit down and talk to the Brooklyn Young Republican Club. And even though Joe Lhota's people didn't let me record the conversations, I ran into another important member of the club.
I'm Jonathan Judge. I'm 27. I am the past president and current chairman of the board of directors for the Brooklyn Young Republican Club. Well, I grew up in Brooklyn, and in looking at the way things worked in New York City and seeing how Mayor Rudy Giuliani, when he was elected to the end of his 2 terms in office, what a transformation occurred in New York City, and especially in Brooklyn, I saw how much got done versus how many years Democrats had been in charge. I decided to register Republican because of Rudy Giuliani and wanting to be a part of the people who solve problems and make things better and don't play up on just special interests and you know, certain voter demographics and make those deals, but someone who looks at the general welfare for everybody.
Jonathan is definitely not your stereotypical Republican. He's young, hip, and when he talks about caring for the general welfare, he means it. So when he invited me out to Coney Island to see him doing some volunteer work, I jumped at the chance to see him in action. What are some stereotypes that you've encountered that people brought to you? I mean, some things people said, or the stereotypes that people...
I hate black people, and I hate poor people, and I hate women. I love slaughtering Palestinians, and I love money to the point that I will steal it from everybody else if I can. I'm pretty sure it hasn't gone to the point where I would eat children, but I'm not sure. I don't remember that being said at some point. So, you know, there's some pretty wild things people assume about, especially a young Republican. I mean, you got to be a really horrible person to be a young Republican. I mean, when you're older and you're Republican, well, you're nasty and crotchety anyway, and you just don't like the future of the world to begin with. But if you're a young Republican, you must be really, really diabolical. And never mind if you're the socially liberal young Republican. Now you're just confused. You know, that's like the bisexuality of politics. It's like the liberal Republican, what's going on here? Pick a side. Don't you know what you are? You know? So...
A day before the election, I met up with Glenn and Jonathan at the Joe Lhota headquarters. Joe Lhota was doing better in the polls, but he was still behind. So Glenn, Jonathan, and another club member went out handing flyers until Joe Lhota arrived at his headquarters. They even got some props from Joe Lhota himself.
Side of Staten Island.
I'll tell you, these Brooklyn Young Republicans have been out there. I'll tell you, you got to give them credit. They're out there, they're making it happen.
Great emails as well.
I know.
Great recommendations for the debates. I appreciate it. Thank you.
We wish you the best, Joe.
Thank you. All right, off to Queens.
All right. Good luck.
Good luck to you.
Thank you, Joe.
Sometimes people go, oh, what's the point? And, you know, I don't see anything. I don't feel like he's doing well. So, you know, even just the presence of being out here, just handing palm cards out, even to people who are going to vote for him, it just reinforces it. Because there are plenty of people who say, I'm going to vote for him. I wouldn't vote for anybody else. I won't go to vote on election day. And it's sad. So, you know, you have to do every little bit that you can in order to make that change happen.
So hopefully Joe will be our next mayor on Tuesday. I know this will be after Tuesday when this comes out, but come on, come out and vote, whoever's listening to this.
Or if you have your time machine, watch this. If you didn't vote for Joe, go back and do it again.
We will be constantly campaigning to get the message out there that Joe Lhota is the right man for the city of New York. I'm really confident that on Tuesday we're going to at least have better results than we think right now because of the supposed dismal polls. So we'll see. All we could do is get out the vote on election day. I'll be going around in a sound car. I got the day off from work, and we'll see what happens. And we can only pray.
The next day I met up with Glenn in Sheepshead Bay, where he drove a sound car around the neighborhood.
Vote and we'll see what happens on 9:30 or so.
Is that when the...
Usually you get a better grasp
Yeah.
what's going on. Hopefully. Did you get a chance to vote yet?
No. I just woke up and came
Oh,
straight
no,
here.
you gotta vote. How are you gonna do that? Well, you're not gonna be here all day.
Don't worry. I'll be fine. Later on, Glenn picked up his sister and then went to vote.
He looks like he's in pain, but he's not. Oh, I'm sorry. You haven't taping? You're taping him walking?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, get this.
Shut
Yeah, I don't care. Keep that.
No, don't.
And of course, the two top candidates in this race both are Brooklyn guys. We go to Brooklyn Heights, not too far away from here, where Joe Lhota, the Republican candidate, went to cast his ballot.
All right, I'm leaving it there.
We spent hours in the sound car until the moment finally came.
For mayor, endorsed by America's mayor, Rudolph Giuliani.
So long and goodbye to the night.
And they just projected de Blasio as the winner, too.
No kidding. I don't understand how people do not realize that out of the two,
you have Loader, clearly the more qualified person for the position, and I don't get it.
A few days later, Glenn invited me to the club's first post-election meeting, and Glenn and Jonathan were right there at the top of the sign-in sheet. I was kind of expecting the meeting to be filled with angry rants about the Joe Loader loss. But this meeting seemed more like a Republican de-stressor event. There was cookies, a raffle, and the guest speaker was Republican strategist Roger Stone. The topic? His new book claiming that Lyndon Johnson killed JFK. What more could a conservative want? But it was nice seeing Jonathan and Glenn in high spirits after the loss. And after a month of hanging out with these guys, I found myself starting to root for them to succeed. A few more months of hanging out with them and who knows, I may join the party again.
So you guys look like you're having a good time. You look like you're in high spirits even after the election and stuff like that. So tell me how you feel.
Like I said before, it's Brooklyn, so we're used to this. But we got to march forward and keep on marching forward. And at the end of the day, once we do that, hopefully we could rebuild this party and get that message out there that the Republican Party, when it comes to law and order issues and economics, and education, that we have the right message. But we have to get that message out there. So we need to go to different communities and different neighborhoods and get that message out to the people individually on a one-to-one basis. So that's what we're looking to do in the new year and moving forward. Thank you.
Looking good, man. Looking good.
Thank you.
We can set it right.